many elements of the Kyogen were seen. One example is the onomatopoeia. The first one that comes to mind right now is when the Tarokaja entered. One of the times he came on a horse and he did this sort of I can't remember the onomatopoeia exactly, but he was saying it, and it was just I think in English it's not so humorous to use an onomatopoeia because it just comes with the language, but in Japanese, when onomatopoeia is sort of exaggerated, I think understanding the language, I think it would be, I can understand how it's can be humorous, while as in English I can't really think of onomatopoeia being that humorous. So I think that's a cultural difference. Another form of exaggeration is there was a lot of screaming. It wasn't painful, high-pitched screaming or anything, which was I thanked them for because I really dislike high-pitched screaming. But every time they would enter or scream, they would kind of do this exaggerated "ah" while they ran in, and it was they had a lot of energy while doing it, and it well, I actually got sick of it towards the end because they did it a few too many times, but the rest of the audience seemed to love it, so maybe that's just me. They also did the very traditional elements seen, like the exaggerated crying and the laughing. With the laughing it's ah ha 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 ha, and the crying it's exaggerated crying. And in Japan you don't really have very many exaggerated movements. Even while speaking, no one really even uses hand gestures most of the time, from my experiences. And therefore, I think even the slightest exaggeration in Japan, this is another cultural thing, but in Japan, I think would be seen as funny. In Western cultures, you would have to truly exaggerate in order to make it humorous, but in Japan, yeah. Props were also used. Fans is one of the basic ones that I can think of. I think it was the wife's friend who, one of the twins' wife's friend saw that he was explaining some kind of story or some kind of belief, and he brought out, she brought out this fan and just used it to emphasize her language, but otherwise I didn't really see it be used as any other object other than a fan. So that idea of the fan representing many different objects was not there. Well, from what I know, from what I saw, I'm not sure if I missed anything, but yes. And also there was music, the flute and the drums. I thought this was done really well. The drums effectively increased tension, and the flute added a sort of mysterious effect. It was very effective, and it was very well done, I think. In Kyogen, you often don't get character development because it is a humorous play, and it's often very short as well. But this is a Western element that's playing into this, that is affecting this play, is that there was character development. Relationships were established, particularly between the servant and the master. At the beginning, it was a sort of, servant-master, boss-worker sort of relationship, while later on you saw that the master and the servant were sort of conversing with each other about this very, very, very ugly master or maid, and they're sort of joking, like, good friends. They're sort of joking around, the two guys, pushing each other around, but this was seen, and again, at the very end, the servant often stood by the master's side and was very, much like a companion, and I thought that this sort of allowed me to connect a little more with the actors, because I'd always felt that Japanese theater, I couldn't, even though it was very visually very nice, it was nice to be able to connect with the actors. Also, something that I'm definitely stealing in a next play that I may direct is, while they were sort of, the wife and her friend, or I'm not sure what she is, were conversing, they sort of the friend was talking to her from this, so here's whoever she's talking to, and then she did this sort of roll across her back while she turned around. And I'm not sure even exactly why it was so effective, but I suppose it's a little out of the norm, and it was simply out of the norm, and it was a very good idea, I think. It added to the visuals. It was a very long piece of speech, so it definitely gave me something to watch as opposed to simply listen to. So I think that was one of the highlights of the play. The costume, although seemingly traditional, it was actually not. By this, you can only tell if you really do have studied the Kyogen, and I'm glad I did, because I noticed that the master and the servant did not have a difference in clothing. Everyone had white trousers and black stockings or leggings underneath, and usually when you have a lord or a master or someone of high ranks, the trousers of the Kyogen pants become much longer to the point where when the actor is stepping on them. And you did not see this with any of the actors. And there was definitely an emperor. There was people of higher status. So I think that was the more Western influenced. But I think that something as subtle as that, I think one should keep to the traditional ways of Kyogen, but I suppose it was very hard to do a costume change, so it's not a big deal, but pointing it out. What is a big deal, though, is that there was a lot of speech towards the end, and then at the end the energy levels went down, and the second half was very boring. I hate to be so blunt, but it was quite dull, and it was an hour and a half long. It was definitely half an hour too long, and even then, I only really enjoyed the first 30 minutes of it. After that, there was so much talking, and the physical theater that they had maintained before and the energy they had maintained before was suddenly sort of just dropping, and I felt that was a real disappointment, because I think this would have been a very successful show had this energy and directing been maintained throughout the entire play.